Recording. Good afternoon. Before we get into today's session, I want to go over a few ground rules and guidelines. The session will be recorded and we also have the transcript enabled. Our goal is to post the recording on the USA or open.usa site, as well as a list of participants and the chats and other things. For those of you who submitted questions ahead of time, thank you very much. We'll also be taking questions via the chat feature in Zoom and trying to keep up with that. We do endeavor to answer all questions left over from the chat as they come in by email. Beyond the discussion today, we invite participants to continue the conversation by submitting written comments, ideas, reactions, whatever you like, to the Open Government Secretariat website. I've just posted that in the chat. We also want to let you know that we've posted on open.usa.gov some of the available materials from the July 12th and the July 20th public engagement sessions. We're still working with Office of Strategic Communications to get the videos themselves posted. But as it stands, we have the presentations, other agenda things for the 12th session. We also have the list of attendees as well as the chat transcripts. So for folks that are interested in seeing that, that is available for you at this URL, which I now also put into the chat. With all that said, hello, my name is Daniel York. I'm the Director of IT Data Transparency within GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy. I'm here to talk to you more about the tracking of open government commitments, go over today's agenda, and then introduce our facilitators. GSA is working on institutionalizing long-term support for the open government work. We'll be providing more details on this a little later this summer. But for now, we want to let you know that we have more staff with the FY25 budget received in the spring. We also have some dedicated funding to be able to do this work. This builds on GSA's existing role in supporting the executive councils and other work we do to support the White House on other government-wide efforts. GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy, OGP, provides forward-thinking policy, guidance, and best practices in federal property, technology, mission support operations, and sustainable solutions for the current and future government. We have publicly posted the initial beta version of the comment tracker. I'm sure one of my colleagues is getting ready to post that in the chat if they haven't already, where you can see we've posted the statuses for about a third of the subcommitments that are in the National Action Plan 5 that we're going to be using as a part of today's exercise. The purpose of today's session is to obtain feedback, encourage broad public input per the 5th Open National Action Plan to advance a more inclusive, responsive, and accountable government. GSA encourages all individuals to provide their own individual thoughts and ideas. GSA does not intend to use any individual or collective opinion expressed as guidance in formulation of official agency policy. That's the end of the legal stuff. With that, I'd like to introduce a few members of my team, Laura Zachamary and Alexis Masterson. Laura, Alexis.
Hey, Dan, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Zachamary. I'm part of the IT Data Transparency team here within GSA. So a little bit about my role on this new team. So I am going to be focused heavily on engagement. So any ideas that you guys have moving forward about how we can improve engagement with the public and engagement with the agencies, anything like that, I'm your girl. So I am thrilled to be here. And with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Alexis, who's going to walk through this and the commitment tracker as well.
Great, thank you, Laura. Hey, everyone, I'm Alexis Masterson. I am also part of the Open Government team, Secretariat team. My background is in policy, and my role is focused on supporting efforts related to monitoring and implementation of the National Action Plan commitments. So on that note, as we get started today, I wanted to share that we have received some questions from participants on how the public can track the progress that's been made by different agencies on the commitments. So the idea behind the commitment tracker website, and thank you to Beatrice for just posting the link, is to make all of this information legible and readily available to the public. So to be clear, what we're looking for you today is very much your honest feedback on how best the tracker commitments can and how they should be displayed to the public so that they're most useful to you. So, we're not going to be going into the details on the status of the actual commitments themselves today. So instead, it's rather going to be about how best those statuses, how they can be consumed by the public. And also, again, just to clarify, we do have other engagement sessions that are scheduled for later dates where we're going to dive into the statuses of the commitments themselves. And those are organized by specific themes. And you can find the dates for those sessions on open.usa.gov. And I believe Dan York posted the link to the schedule page just a few moments ago. So I hope that is helpful in understanding, again, the purpose of today's session. And with that, I am going to pass the virtual mic over to Dominic Beamer from the White House's Office of Science and Technology Policy. Let's see you there, Dom.
Yes, I'm here. So I just try to get off mute. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, GSA team. I know we've gotten to speak to many of you at prior sessions and just want to reiterate the importance of transparency in the democracy of the United States of America. And I want to say that this work plays an important role in the President Biden's mandate for the federal government to deliver services with a focus on experience of people and giving it equitably. So I think I want to dive into the comments that you have on this tracker. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to I believe Dan.
Hello, Dan again. So I saw Alex Howard's question in the chat. Yeah, you are correct. There are about 13 of the 36 commitments there currently. Before we went ahead and posted the commitments, all of them, we want to make sure we best understood how the public wanted to see them. And so we're going through that process today. OSTP might have an update later on when the rest of them will be available. And with that, I'll introduce our facilitators. We have Beatrice. She's a President's Innovation Fellow from GSA, as well as Michael, a President's Fellow from GSA, detailed to the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Beatrice, Michael have background in human-centered design and will be facilitating today's workshop to better understand how your needs and suggestions on how we can improve the commitment tracker in the future. So with that, I'll pass it to Beatrice, I think.
Thank you, Dan. So hello, everyone. So I'm Beatrice Mercier, and it is my pleasure to facilitate today's workshops along with my colleague, Michael Mogeson. So we're very excited to be able to run these sessions as a sort of experiment in new ways in which we can engage with the public. So, drawing from our backgrounds in human-centered design. So we hope that these interactive workshops will bring us sort of one step closer to understanding your needs and really co-constructing a commitment tracker which is both useful and easy to use for everyone. So I look forward to hearing from everyone here today. Passing it on to Michael.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. Great to be here. I'm super excited to be able to join this session. And before we jump into the actual exercises themselves, just to go over some kind of just basic ground rules. This is meant to be a participatory exercise. It's an opportunity, we hope, for everyone to contribute. And we'd love to be able to hear from the broadest array of participants as possible. We do ask that this be a non-judgment zone. So we would love for everyone to build off of each other's contributions, but please refrain from making negative comments about other people's contributions. And if for some reason you can't access Mural, which is the platform or the tool that we'll be using here, or you're just having kind of difficulty using it, navigating it, then please feel free to just drop your comments into the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and we'll do our best to capture those and get them into Mural in real time. And I'll hand it back to Beatrice.
Wonderful. So we'll be working with this interactive whiteboard called Mural today. So I just shared in the chat a link towards Mural, towards the interactive whiteboard. So normally you should be able to access it without having to sign in. So please click on the link and open up a window so you can use the whiteboard. And so, yes, thank you for sharing the screen. So as you can see here, we have sort of a virtual whiteboard and virtual pink Post-its. So these little colored squares. And so I would like to, so we're going to run this exercise called Hopes and Fears, sort of envisioning the future for the commitment tracker and the general process through which our team can keep civil society updated in terms of the progress that's been made on the different commitments for the National Action Plan around open government. So I would invite everyone to sort of, grab Post-it. So literally, if you double click on one of the colored squares in pink, you should be able to type in any text you'd like. And so we're going to start with the hopes, and then we're going to give ourselves a few minutes to sort of hear from you guys, build on that, and then we'll be moving on at a later time around and talk about the fears we have for the future of the commitment tracker. So I'd like to invite everyone, if you're able to, sort of double click on one of the pink boxes, and you should be able to type in text. So please share with us in writing your hopes, aspirations, suggestions for how this process can work best for you. If anyone is having difficulties with the actual software, feel free to share your text directly in the chat as a comment, and then we'll be happy to copy paste your contribution onto the Mural board. And so the idea is really to build on collective intelligence and to sort of get a feel for the broadest range of people's sort of suggestions, feedback. And so I'll give folks, so I'm going to start the timer here on the Mural. I'll give folks maybe about 3 minutes to sort of start writing your input, and then we'll start debriefing, sort of calling on people, asking people to sort of chime in, kind of give us more of an update, sort of explain context around their different contributions. And so as you're filling in the Post-its, the facilitators, so Michael and I and Alexis will start grouping Post-its thematically. So if a number of people, if the same issue comes up for several people, we might create a little cluster where the same themes intersect. And so the idea here is to be able to see visually what are the topics that come up the most and where is there the most interest from the public. So with that being said, I'll start the timer for 3 minutes to give us time to. Yep.
And don't worry about making things pretty. We can work with rough. You can zoom in as well. All of you should be able to zoom in if you need to just make those sticky notes bigger. So just start populating stuff in there. Get them in there as best as possible. And like I said before, we will be monitoring the chat to help you out.
Is anyone having difficulties technically with Mural?
And again, if Mural is challenging, put your comments in the chat. We will capture those and get them onto a sticky note for you.
Beatrice, can you remind us our hopes and fears about the tracker?
So they're about the tracker, and also more broadly, how can the OpenGov Secretariat team update the public. So the tracker is one way, it's one technological solution to update the public in terms of the progress that's being made, but we're very open here to hear ideas that maybe are a bit more out of the box. So the idea is really how can we fulfill on the tracker's mission, which is to keep people updated, to keep people up to date, really, on the progress that's being made.
And we do encourage people to try and be somewhat succinct. We'll do our best to get comments onto these sticky notes. But do try and make your comments a little bit succinct if possible.
Okay, so that was the 3-minute timer. So I think maybe we can start grouping these different post-its to see if there are big themes that pop out. So I've created sort of a little cluster here with requests and sort of hopes really based around the website's design. So clear and granular filter, better data mining functions. I was wondering if the people who suggested these post-its could maybe unmute for a minute or so and sort of just share maybe a bit more context on that topic with us.
Regard to the data mining?
Yes, so if you submitted one of these post-its around sort of better data mining functions, better filters, APIs, knowledge base, we'd love to hear a bit more about you, from you.
Hi.
That's a combination of both filters and the data mining that I have posted in, and that is sometimes when you're trying to find specific information, that when you do whatever query through the interface, it brings back too much information, and then you're drilling down and taking twice too much time. So that if you can have a more granular way of directing your filter or query to return a smaller data set, and it makes life easier for everybody, as well as the impact on the database, because you're not bringing back so many rows of data.
Great, thank you.
Would anyone else like to unmute themselves and share what they posted?
There's someone with a hand up.
Hi, my name's Salona. One thing I would highly recommend in regards to all of this is that y'all go check out the ODI, the Open Data Initiative. They're out of London, and they do a lot of work helping the British open up a bunch of different data sets, and they've got some really good best practices. And so to be quite honest, I'm kind of stealing from some of the work I've done with them. But I'm the one who proposed the knowledge base, having a good way of reporting data, both that's not being updated or that needs to be updated, or things, or even incorrect data, and how to go about doing that. So that would probably be my first recommendation, is to actually go look at the ODI's best practices. Because I think that will help y'all out a lot, because they've already written a lot of that up.
Great, thank you, Selena. I'll add a post-it, sort of look into ODI practices.
And I know that they're on the other side of the pond, but they're probably still more than willing to help. They do a lot of work with Tim Berners-Lee.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
We did also document some of the links you put in the chat as well, so we have those in addition.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, so this is really great. Thank you. There's a lot of suggestions around how can we correct incorrect data? How can we flag it? How do we pull down data which is no longer fresh, no longer useful, no longer prioritized? I think maybe should we? Yeah, I'd be interested to hear a bit more, maybe around people who posted this, who wrote about sort of the archiving the history, right, of the past national action plans. Would someone be willing to sort of speak on that succinctly, please?
This is Sophia Liu from the U.S. Geological Survey. I posted the one all the way on the lower left, just out of curiosity of learning how these various engagement sessions or approaches have evolved over time, to see how that can inform other open government and related initiatives. I think it's been great to see how you guys have been trying to go beyond just, say, the Federal Register to get feedback, to simplify.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry, so we're actively working on the whiteboard as well to group thematic post-its. But Stephen, I see your hand is up, please.
Yes, Steve Buckley. I've attended most of the meetings over the past, since 2009, of the Open Government Interagency Working Group, which I think theoretically is still exists, at least on paper. But they used to meet, I think, at least they used to allow outsiders to come in and attend their meetings every quarter. So yes, I agree that the idea that there needs to be some lessons to be learned, otherwise you'll just repeat the same thing that your predecessors made. And one of them is that deliverable outcomes, like completed actions, is really a to-do list. It's a deliverable, but it's not an outcome. If you want to, if the ultimate goal is to improve citizen engagement, transparency to citizens so they can be more informed and engaged than they are now, then you need to have some way of evaluating that, not just counting the number of things on the to-do list that you completed. A lot of people, and I used to work at the federal government, I know it's all about compliance and following the rules, and if we do this, then something good will happen, and you go down your list and do all those things. But like we know, a lot of times you follow the recipe or the directions on the manual and it still doesn't work. So that's the outcome we want. We want something to work, and we want confusing action with progress is a blind spot. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, so
thanks, Stephen. I just so you know, I've added some yellow sticky notes, and those are for group. So as we're grouping, if there's key themes that people are seeing in those groups, feel free to add what those themes are, and we can do that in real time as well as we go.
Wonderful, and thank you, Stephen. So I've sort of taken the liberty of adding a post-it that touches on your comments. So tracking outcomes rather than deliverables. Okay, I think we have time maybe for to talk about one last idea cluster before we move on to the fears part. There's a big cluster on the top right of the mural around accountability. So would anyone like to comment on that and make suggestions? Anyone? Any of the 5 people here who submitted post-its around identifying responsible agencies, tracking the groups that are supposed to be opening up data? Would anyone care to speak on that? I suppose they're quite detailed post-its, so thank you. I think that's good enough. So I'd like to suggest, so in the interest of time, that we move on to the second half of the exercise, which is talking about the community's fears around what could go wrong, what we don't want to see in terms of how this commitment tracker is built and the general process for informing the public is engaged in. So now that you're all experts using Mural, so it's the same exercise. I'm going to start a timer for 3 minutes, and yeah, feel free to grab a yellow post-it and then to fill in with any content. Any fears, any apprehensions. We're not looking for a particular format of response, but really open to very free discussion here.
And don't hold back, fears it can be pretty broad. Hopefully don't hold back too much. It's an opportunity to get your thoughts and your ideas down and share out. I don't know if ticking the box is the right title there, so feel free, others, to adapt that accordingly.
Michael, we have a hand up. I think Stefan has something he wants to say. Or did you try to wait till the timer to run out? Oh, hand just came up. Disregard.
Okay. User experience.
All right, that's it. So that was the 3 minutes. I don't know if folks are still writing post-its, but we do have sort of a couple clusters that have started to appear. So there's a cluster at the bottom of the screen around sort of user experience. So lack of findability, the content management, or the UI is not user-friendly, poor interfaces, too much data and unable to sort. Would anyone like to speak on that?
Hello, Salona again. Those, a bunch of those were mine. In case you don't. Yeah. So on those is basically, again, like I said, a lot of this is documented elsewhere, but when going through and doing those kinds of aspects, I think those are frequent things that occur when people are trying to browse data. Like I even remember when data.gov first got launched and we had so much data that it was like impossible to find what it is that you were looking for. That's one of the reasons why I suggested back then that we do a knowledge base. Didn't happen in 08, but so that sort of thing. But I feel like a lot of these different ones are kind of, I don't know. I feel like on some level, I would like to review with y'all some of the best practices that already exist on this, because there's a lot of work that's already been done, so that I can give y'all better, more coherent checklists in regards to that. Because, I'm just literally going off the top of my head, but there's a lot more there.
Thank you. I know there's a couple of links in the chat as well that we can review with various other dashboards and statuses, some from the previous administrations. So we have all those documented and we'll make sure the chat's available in the meeting notes.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. So there's another big cluster on the top left of the screen around data safety. So the idea that the data can be changed, that the moment the data is no longer prioritized, it's erased, it's pulled down. And this idea of a lack of standards, which means that the data is unusable or it's inaccurate or incompatible data formats. Would anyone like to speak to that?
Beatrice is a longtime data person. This is Denise Ross, Deputy US CTO. I'm just curious if these comments are about open data generally or about the content that we're producing in order to update the public on the status of the open government commitments. Because I can see some of this feels like concerns about open data in more generally, maybe rather than the specific status updates on the commitments.
I believe the intention was for the latter, Denise, but we can take those comments that are more general about open data and apply them and use them in this particular context if relevant. But the intention was for this to be specific.
For awareness, we also have a hand up. I believe Gerard had his hand up for a second. Gerald, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, thank you. I was just talking about the user interface or the user experience, because sometimes the comment you get a lot is that government sites use too much governmentese in the query, like specific topics, and then the user is able to retrieve what they're looking for because they don't know the terminology. Either needs to be explained or that is more convenient and receptive by the everyday user.
Right, yes, so that will be important. Thank you. Thank you for your.
And I've captured that.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's a post-it
got it.
list with a user experience cluster. Okay, and so there's a final big cluster, I think, with which we can sort of conclude the first workshop for today around, so the title for this cluster is called Ticking the Box. So there are a number of different post-its here. This idea that open government is focused too narrowly on open access and open data, but so that sidelines open science and innovation initiatives. The idea that there's maybe this is a separate cluster. The idea that the new OpenGov team needs to learn from past iterations of open government national plans in order to avoid repeating certain difficulties. And I fear this, and then the final post-it, I fear this session, Read the Tracker, will be seen as serving the purpose of co-collaboration for developing map commitments. I think that's not very clear to me. I don't know if any of the three people who posted these post-its would like to share their thoughts with us.
Hey, Susan Hurley with Public Citizen. I was the last when you discussed this session being seen perhaps as serving the purpose of co-collaboration. And I will just say this is an incredibly collaborative session. So, thank you for that. I am, just sort of having a little bit of disconnect between what I know myself and some others in the open government community felt, regarding the sort of front end of this process, the creation of the commitments in the National Action Plan. And so, it feels so different, this level of collaboration, than sort of like where we were beginning the process. And so now I'm offering a lot of being asked to offer a lot of thoughts on commitments that I didn't really necessarily have a hand in coming up with. I feel like overall, a lot of great stuff in the National Action Plan. I have a stronger focus on FOIA than many of the other topics. And so, what in previous sessions, in the Obama years, it had like a stronger focus on that as part of the work that we were doing together to come up with the commitment. So I just want to second sort of everyone's ideas to go back to the previous national action plans. But overall, I love the idea of making sure that we're accountable and that we are, actually fulfilling the commitments that have been put forward. So again, I don't want to discount this great work that you're doing to get all of our thoughts. It just, sort of feels like putting the cart before the horse, as it were.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So in the interest of time, because we do want to move on to the second half of this workshop, where we'll be focusing specifically on the commitment tracker on the website's design and feel. I'm going to have to cut this workshop short, but as Dan mentioned earlier on, please feel free to continue this conversation. So the goal of this session is to start the discussion. And so feel free to sort of write into the OpenGov Secretariat team anytime with comments, requests, sort of criticism. I think that, the team is very, very open to discussion. Yeah, and so with that being said, I'd like to pass it on to my colleagues, Alexis and Laura, who will be talking about the commitment tracker, the website.
Great, thank you, Beatrice. All right, and Laura, you are sharing the screen. Wonderful. Okay. So we're going to walk you all through the tracker. The link was provided earlier, but we are also going to do a live demo. So to get started, I want to say, first of all, a big thank you to Phil Ashlock in the Technology Transformation Services here at GSA for building out this beta tracker. We're thrilled to have it live. Second of all, as was pointed out in the chat, this is just a subset of all of the commitments. And our plan is to have all of them posted by the end of August. And hopefully that will be in a format that looks different from what we're going to be seeing today. And the differences will come based on the feedback we are going to hopefully receive, and we have received so far, from all of you, as well as from other stakeholders. And then furthermore, going forward, we plan to update the tracker with statuses of the commitments at least twice a year at a minimum. So that's where things stand, at a high level. And then let's jump into things so we can take a look around. So at the top on the main landing page, when you get here, you're first going to be greeted by some language that's temporary language, explaining that, as we just discussed, this is a beta site. And, we plan to continue making further enhancements based on input we receive. And honestly, that's going to continue indefinitely. Nothing is ever perfect. We are always going to be welcome forevermore to feedback and ideas from all of you. So the next, scrolling through the page, you could do that, please, Laura. Thank you very much. You're going to see that the commitments are organized by theme. And let's go to the first theme right up at the top. If you click on that one, improve access to government data, research, and information, you'll see it takes you right to it takes you to that section of the National Action Plan. So basically, it's just a quick link, essentially. And we can actually jump right back if we want. So we can go back to the tracker page. Perfect, thank you. So let's actually click on a commitment. So let's click on that first one, 113. All right, so this brings us to the page for that commitment, as well as all of the subcommitments that fall under it. So let's just start right at the top, and we'll make our way down gradually. So right at the top, we have, let's see, we have two links at the top. One, it'll go either view all commitments, that will show you all commitments, and then all commitments by this theme, that would take you to all commitments by this theme. So again, just quick, easy links if you want to see different commitments arranged in different ways. But now, as for what this commitment is, beyond just the number 113, not very explanatory, that and what the theme is, that information comes directly below. So we see that the commitment title, oh, sorry, if you could just scroll up a little bit, Laura. Thank you. We see the commitment title, expand the production, dissemination, and use of equitable data. And then we also see the theme, improve access to government data, research, and information. And if you actually click on that theme name, if you wouldn't mind doing that, right there, sorry, right there at the top, go up a little bit to the right. Thank you, sorry, it's new for all of us. That takes you to the portion of the National Action Plan where the text for this commitment comes from, so where the theme is pulled from. And if we want to jump back, you're going to see right there, there are two buttons in blue. The one on the left, full commitment text, once again, is going to take you back to the National Action Plan. And this is a pretty nice shortcut because the way we organize the tracker, it's done by subcommitments, which means the language is sort of piecemeal in sections. And it might be that for some reason you want to have the entire commitment language all as one block. You're able to click on that link and it will take you back to the specific portion of the National Action Plan where all of the text for the single commitment is pulled from, all in one single block. So then we also have that blue button on the right, OGP commitment page. That takes you to the main opengovernmentpartnership.org website. We want to click on that. I'm guessing most people are familiar with this. And of course, we have the official record for the commitment as part of the US's participation in the OGP. So if we want to, we'll jump back. Thank you. Okay, so let's scroll down just so we can see one of these tables in full. Perfect, thanks. So all of these tables show the status of each subcommitment that makes up commitment 113. So if for all of those commitments that aren't broken up into subcommitments, you're only going to see one table. And each table, it shows the subcommitment text. That's that first row at the top. And next, you're going to see the agency that is responsible for implementing it. And then the current narrative below. And this is describing the progress to date of the commitment. And those narratives, those come directly from the agencies themselves. So that's not OSTP, that's not GSA. Well, I should say, except for the cases where, like this one, OSTP is the responsible agency, but it is the agencies themselves writing these narratives and then sending them along to us to post. And then, of course, each agency will go through their internal approval or clearance, whatever process they have to go to make sure it's good to go, sends it over to us, and then these get posted online. That way everyone can see what the status is on making progress to meeting these commitments. We did want to give one example. If we could jump back one more page, please, Laura. Thank you. And then if we could go down to where we can find one more to 127 at the bottom, I think. Perfect, second from the bottom, thanks. And then we'll go down to subcommitment 127.2. All right, awesome. So we see the progress here, commitment status under review. This is just an example of one where we haven't received a complete update yet from the responsible agency. And so this is one where we need to touch base with the point of contact, try to get more details, figure out what exactly is the status. Has there been substantive progress to date that we can report on? So this is one of the ones that is going to, come closer towards that end of August deadline. With that, I am getting pinged that we need to watch the clock. So let me actually pause here. That way we have time for questions and to move on to Beatrice's other activity. Beatrice, unless you want to jump directly over back to Mural.
I'd like to suggest that we move on to the next activity where we'll really be hearing from you directly as to how you're receiving this new website. So what you like about it, what you like less about it. So I'm sharing again in the chat the link to the actual commitment website. So feel free to play around with it, click on different links, see how easy the experience of navigating it is, if you can find the information that's useful to you. And on the mural side of things, I will, so we're moving on to the second half. Right, so I've summoned everyone to a second half of the screen where we were going to be doing an exercise called I like, I wish, I wonder, which is sort of a classic exercise when we're doing website design and we're trying to get feedback from people on how easy it is to or how hard it is to use a website. So in the interest of time, we've got a little bit less than 15 minutes, we've got 13 minutes to the end of the hour. So I'd like to suggest that we take maybe 4 minutes per I like, I wish, I wonder. So let's start with sort of the green post-its at the top. I like, so feel free to complete the sentence. I like blah, 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 blah. About sort of the website. So what is useful, what's nice, what's easy to use. So we'd like to hear all your thoughts on this. And so I'm going to put a 2 minute, maybe a 1 minute timer, because this is sort of rapid fire. We're looking for your instantaneous sort of gut reaction to this. And then when the minute's over, maybe if 1 or 2 people could sort of chime in, give more context to their post-its, that would be great. And then we'll work our way down through the I wish and the I wonder. So the idea is to get sort of this 360 feedback to the team designing the website, so they have a sense of what they can work on to improve it.
And just to be really specific, because I think there might be a comment in the chat, this is specifically about the website that was just shared with everyone. It's not about your mural or this particular exercise workshop. We welcome your feedback, and there will be an opportunity to give feedback on this workshop. But we're asking people to give their I like if there is something that they like about the website that was just shared out with you. And please don't hold back. Get your thoughts out there. We want to capture those.
Hey, facilitators, just a logistical thing. There's some issues with scrolling for me since I'm sharing my screen. If you guys don't mind grouping things to the left instead of all the way to the right, I can't get over there to just share the screen. Sorry.
Will do.
Okay, so we're starting to get some feedback. There's praise for the website, the user experience in terms of navigation. There's another post-it. I like that it is clear which agency is responsible as well as what the progress is. Great for accountability. Would someone maybe like to speak on that? Just so we can have a bit more context, understand where you're coming from.
This is Susan again with Public Citizen. Had so many screens open, took me a while to find my unmute in the Zoom. I feel like I said this in my last comment when I was speaking, but basically it is very good for accountability to have that clear progress note as well as which agency or department is responsible. So just like overarchingly, like the progress as this is showing and the path forward.
Great. Okay. And so there are 2 post-its on the user experience. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. I see that folks are already starting to fill in the I wish part of the workshop. So yeah, so we're happy to hear your thoughts on the positives around the UX. And if not, we can move on to the I wish part of the workshop. Okay, well, let's move on to the I wish part. Right, okay. So there's a first post-it here. I wish that it were searchable, sortable, and downloadable data. Could the person who submitted this post-it give us maybe a bit more context, sort of like what would you hope to achieve, so that we can better understand your use case and how the website could accommodate that?
Apologies. It's just every data source that we get from the government, our researchers like it to be searchable, sortable, and downloadable. And that's only so we can, manipulate it more easily versus having to sort of like page through and click through and pull up each individual commitment. I understand that that is sort of like different than the user interface of, the everyday American be able to look through and see the important progress that I spoke about earlier. But yeah, as far as like researchers or people who want to look at this data, perhaps trends over years or things like that, it's usually just best practice to have it be in a more like numerical, quantitative format.
Great, thank you. So I added a sister post-it saying, make it easier to manipulate data to do research. Sort of, it's not exactly as complete as your answer, but it will give us more indications that we're working on this in the future. There's an interesting cluster here that's appearing. I wish it had a validation status from GSA and civil society independent reviewers. I wish there was a methodology to validate each update with citizen independent review. I'd be interested to hear a bit more about that, your thoughts, the context around this. Does anyone want to claim these post-its and address them? It's fine if not.
I did the one that I wish it had more links to the work, because I really appreciate the ones where it does boil down and it has a link to, oh, and here's where they're sorting it out. It feels a little bit more disconnected when it's like, oh, they're working on it. It's, that always feels awkward. And that's why I put it with the status statement too. Because I also entered that one, which is basically, I wish it had links to the work, and then I wish it actually had where its status was out if I can't see links to the work.
Right, so by the work you mean sort of proof of update, proof of progress that's being made.
Yeah, proof of progress, proof of where they're talking about it, or, because I know that sometimes it drops over into another department that isn't y'all's kind of thing. And so when it does that, like, looking at like the example right now, like, for example, on, it says OSTP, and then it's like, okay, here's the link on our executive order. Here's where it's at. Here is this, da, da, da. And then there's another one where it's like, well, they're reviewing their findings. It's like, okay, but if there's no like date or time or any kind of feedback on that, it just doesn't feel very real. Or do you know what I mean? And so it feels like it should link over to something that's actually showing what's happening there. That's just what I mean in regards to actual links to the work, so I can sit there and see it. It doesn't always have, I do want to know where they think they are in regards to progress, but it is ideal to have the proof of the progress. So that's just kind of what I was looking for.
Great, thank you. I think, so I'm not the expert, so maybe Alexis can speak a bit more on this, but I do believe that certain commitments have more of that, have more information. I'd be interested if maybe if you take a bit more time to sort of play around with the tracker, look at different commitments, because I think the discussion here is really about what counts as proof, what counts as verification of the progress that's being made. So we're really interested in hearing your thoughts on this. I think, Stephen, you have your hand up.
Yes, Steve Buckley again. Along the lines of what Salona was just saying, if there was some sense of where the agency or where the job or commitment was in the process. And the other part is that because at the end of the day or at the end of the cycle, the Open Government Partnership will review, and then it's not a yes, no, what's this done? Because a lot of times there is no end goal, like improve public engagement. Well, there is no we don't solve that and then you're done. It's just you improve on it. Anyway, substantial. I've always wondered what substantial compliance means. Does that mean mostly done? More than half? Or just, it sounds like a very fuzzy metric for describing the metric, whether it was substantially done. So it sounds like a pass. It's kind of like a gentleman's C, passing grade. Oh, they're working on it and they seem to be going along. So I'm just saying, somewhere along the line, if they could say approaching what substantial compliance means. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time maybe for a last question before we wrap up at the end of the hour. So maybe Alex.
Thank you. I put a lot into the chat, so most of the substantive feedback is there. I just want to appreciate your team for the open and collaborative response and putting this on the record, creating the chat transcript. Otherwise, doing this in the open, it's all just terrific, I think, as modeling for other agencies. And as I said in the chat, I think it would be meaningful if every agency that has a commitment is tracking it itself in an open and accountable way on a restored open government page at /open. That includes, of course, White House components and GSA itself. Our experience in civil society during the Obama administration is that often the dashboards that got put up would be reflective of the government's assessment of its progress, and that might not be reflective of where expert researchers or the public thought things were. And the more you could create double-sided reviews, that would be meaningful. And please do try to integrate the Open Government Partnerships independent review mechanisms reports, because those often, I think, provide a useful counterbalance and are independent. The public will be looking for independent third-party assessments of these things, not just taking your word for it. So the more you can do that, I think the more you'll be able to build trust through showing your work and linking out to those. And I would encourage you to go back and apply the commitment tracker approach to the third and fourth national action plans too, so that the American public and the press and all the stakeholders can see how these have worked out in the past, and that will inform them about how this connects to this current work. And thank you for all that you've done to get ready for today's meeting on this count. So it really does make a difference.
Great. And I wanted to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Beatrice.
No, please, I was going to say, perfect timing, Dan. Time to wrap up the session for today.
No, I do appreciate everyone's time today. We, like I mentioned, will be capturing the video, capturing the chat, capturing the attendees, and putting as much of that online as soon as we can at open.usa.gov. So we'll be working on that. But I do want to thank everyone. Frankly, we can't have an interactive session like this if we don't have public participation. So thank you very much for all of your input, all of the links. We very much appreciate it. And with that, it is 3 o'clock. So thank you so much again. And please remember to reach out to the Open Government Secretariat at gsa.gov if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or is there anything we can do to improve the process. So thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.